Hello, everybody at the Sui conference. This is Balaji here at Balaji S on Twitter. Going to talk to you today about 10 on-chain apps I'd like to see people build. Another way of putting this is open problems in Web3. I want to talk about kind of what's important and valuable, but falling through the cracks. And whether you do this on Sui, whether you do this at some combination of Web3 and Web2 technologies is up to you. There's just things I would like to see. So just to motivate, this concept of open problems, how should you approach them? First, what is an open problem? I'm going to kind of talk about a bunch of somewhat, partially defined problems. You could think of these as like requests for startups or like open problems in math. The thing about this is you don't necessarily need to launch headlong into doing a startup to attack one of these. You might write a review of what's already out there. You might do like a little GitHub project. You might set up a microsite. And then if all that goes well and you get some social media energy around it, then and only then do you do a startup. So this way you sort of grade the degree of effort and energy you're spending on these, right? So without further ado, a list of open problems in Web3. The thing about it is Web3 is a backend technology, only really the price is flashy. So a lot of these are going to be backend like things. So first question is, what does optimal Dow tooling look like? At the top, basically in each of these, I'll show red, which is kind of like what we're currently doing and what we could be doing. So DAO is kind of a misnomer because it's neither decentralized nor autonomous, but it is an organization. Discord is a stopgap. It's not really crypto native. What does DAO native tooling look like? It's on-chain treasury, it's on-chain governance, it's a fiat to crypto interface. Really, it's an on-chain organization and something which can manage a cross-chain treasury functionality there. Second question, how do we best tokenize an open source project? So Nadia Eghbal wrote a book several years ago about how open source was really important, but it wasn't funded well enough. And a while back, I put out a tweet which said, hey, if you're an open source developer, you could maybe issue a coin and have it be something that is awarded to folks who contribute code. And eventually it becomes something where to get bugs fixed in that repository, you can essentially buy some of that token. So if there's like a Linux token or something like that, that's one concept. There's probably others. Can we allow open source developers with one click to make money from a token or otherwise tokenize their code bases at their own discretion, of course? Third question, open question, what does Postgress for Web3 look like? Right now, there's a zillion ways to bridge, Postgres or a traditional backend to all these blockchains. Every crypto company reinvents this. Is there something like PostGIS was, but for blockchains? We kind of did something like this at Coinbase called Rosetta, where PostGIS, what it does, it adds spatial primitives to Postgres. So you can do longitudinal queries, that kind of stuff. If you're building an Uber or Airbnb and you want to find all the cars or all the apartments that are within 5 miles of this XY location, this latitude and longitude, PostGIS is good for that. Can we add something like that to Postgres, but for blockchains? Can we add something called PostChain? I literally wrote about this 10 years ago. I'd still like to see this. So what does Postgres for Web3 look like? Next open question, how do we migrate between blockchains? So, for quite a few years, Binance did this, Blockstack did this. How do people move between blockchains? You could literally start off-chain in your own database. You could start, with a Sui token. You could start with ERC20 and move to your own blockchain. There's many ways to do this. There's atomic swaps, there's cross-chain bridges, there's like freeze and restore. Can you start in a centralized database and then move some assets or all of them to on-chain environments? What's the right, way of doing this? And maybe there's more than one way. How do we quantify and then optimize decentralization? So basically, for years, people have talked about what's decentralized. I published a paper several years ago called Quantifying Decentralization, which proposed a set of metrics for how decentralized the system is. Intuitively, it's like how many entities do you need to choke point the whole system. If we can quantify this, then we can optimize it because we can say, hey, look, okay, given scarce resources, we want to boost the number of miners or the number of stakers or the number of validators, the number of developers, and that's a true bottleneck of the system, the number of exchanges. So how do we quantify and optimize decentralization? Next, kind of relatedly, can we visually unify coin tables and cap tables? So we have, your equity on Cardano and AngelList. We have your coins on Coinbase. Can we set up a combined web dashboard for this, perhaps using APIs? Because a lot of people hold equity as well as coins in both. And maybe the answer for this is just tokenize equity. Maybe it's something else. Next question. This is a really deep one. Can we automate accounting with triple entry bookkeeping? Once you have transactions on chain, then the next step is you have financial statements on chain. You can basically put accounting on chain. If you have enough, sends and receives, enough tagging of transactions, you can actually start to generate financial statements automatically. I think at some point in the future, people will ask, oh my God, I can't believe we ever did accounting without blockchains. Even 5-10 years ago, which is a long time in crypto years, when I was at Coinbase, something that was remarkable to me is that when the Big Four would come and they would do like the annual accounting, they would true up, they would compare internal transactions to the transactions on the Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchain, which was like a third gold standard. It's, it's not double entry, it's triple entry, because there's also an entry made on the blockchain. And that was actually extremely valuable because, rather than blockchains being a scam or a fraud, actually they were a gold standard of truth that you could compare internal transactions with the company against some external unified global standard of truth. So some very, very powerful stuff we can do in terms of accounting, in terms of also not just proof of reserve, but proof of reserves and who has what liabilities and so on and so forth. So I think on-chain accounting, automated accounting is a very, very powerful concept. Relatedly, can we put Sandhill on chain? So there's a lot of concepts from venture capital that are actually quite helpful, like the liquidation waterfall or the concept of alignment, where you get paid if the venture capitalist gets paid, if the founder gets paid, if the employees get paid, and so on and so forth at an exit. Can we have alignment so that, when folks are buying into a coin, buying into a token, it's not a question of, okay, a bunch of people buy in and the guy who sells first wins. Perhaps there could be co-sale rights. Perhaps there can be ROFRs. Perhaps there can be things that have been used to align economics in the venture capital world that we can, bring selectively into the crypto world, right? Things like waterfalls, drag-alongs, lockups, vesting. Can we put these kinds of things on chain? Ninth, can we get a dashboard of dashboards? There's so many dashboards out there. Dune is doing a pretty good job. Maybe that's actually the answer, but can we create a Yahoo-style index of these dashboards, indexed by coin, open sourcedness, and other variables? 10th, what does delegation look like for DAO? So Ethereum's new stuff on account abstraction, addresses this in part, but basically, we know that in a company we've got org charts, you've got a principal, they delegate to an agent. We have, what we basically want is access control lists and permissioning within DAO such that person A can do this and person B can do that, kind of like Google Docs style. I can view, I can edit, I can read, I can share. Can we get widgets like that to control who can see balances, who can send them, who can receive them, and so on and so forth? Can you have an interface like that for a DAO? This relates to DAO, treasury management stuff. So I actually, I mentioned the 10 open problems, but actually here's a few more than 10. So number 11, can we do pure CPA for Webcommerce? So a friend of mine, Antonio, is working on this, Antonio Garcia Martinez, but basically the concept is in normal internet advertising, you have CPC, which is ads that are paid per click, or CPM, which are ads that are paid per milli, which is every 1,000 views. Could you get pure CPA, which is an ad which only pays upon a conversion? In order for that to work, when you click an ad, you go to the vendor's website, you buy something, and then the vendor only pays, let's say Google, if and only if, let's say, they sell a widget, right? For that to work, Google and the customer and the vendor all basically need to be transacting within a incorruptible fourth party interface. Basically, now we call it a blockchain that records a transaction, that records a payment, and that both Google or the advertiser and the vendor know can't be corrupted. If that's the case, we might be able to do pure CPA advertising where the vendor is only paying for clicks that actually result in conversions, which is really the ideal. So this could disrupt online advertising if you can get it to work. And that's also a reason that merchants would accept crypto. Number 12, can we develop user-aligned metrics? Now, this is a very seemingly vague thing, but let me see if I can, get the concept across. With Web 2.0, it was suddenly possible to have metrics that would show you like, okay, you send out a newsletter blast, boom, here's all these people clicking and viewing your website. And we've taken for granted that we can do that. That was simply not possible in the offline world. You didn't know who was viewing your article. You didn't have analytics, feedback, anything like that. Maybe you get some letters and that would tell you that a particular article, hit a nerve, but for the most part, you didn't know who was viewing it. In Web3, there's a huge new thing, which is every individual has a wallet and you can look at provable things. So for example, let's say you were doing, Bloomberg in the age of crypto. Ideally, here's somebody's balance and they view content, and that actually means their balance goes up, right? The financial content is actually improving them, and it's actually boosting their balance. Now, that's something which you can actually measure on chain. You can see people's performance. You could see, okay, I saw this financial content actually boosted performance over here. But you could apply that to, let's say, men's health. And what does men's health look like in the time of Fitbit? Do you start booking more proof of workouts, after you view this particular content? What kind of content, what kind of stimulus gets the right response from people now that we can sort of see things like portfolios or NFTs locally? Can we see a quantifiable impact on behavior based on these sort of provable, either an increase in your balance or increase in your NFTs? So basically, it's user-aligned metrics, essentially. Number 13, can we fairly benchmark blockchain? So there's this great site called the Computer Languages Programming Benchmarks Game. And could we do something like that, a set of open source benchmark programs to measure, things like, synchronization time for chains and, whether their smart contracts are, safe enough or things like that? Could we come up with a set of benchmarks to start benchmarking across blockchains that was neutral enough that anybody could upload their stuff? Number 14, can we enumerate the nouns and the verbs? Now, this is kind of an endless thing, but basically in 2018, I gave a internal talk on Coinbase on the concept of the nouns and the verbs of crypto. Nouns are like holders, miners, developers. Verbs, buy, sell, send, receive, stake, mine, buy, earn, etc. And as you start conceptualizing those new nouns and new verbs, you get interesting interaction effects. Can we start enumerating the nouns and verbs and how they connect? And finally, this is kind of related, can we get a status dashboard for all assets? As simple as it sounds. For every coin, is it pre-launch, testnet, post-launch? Do you have to pick up our coins, migrate them, do something, collect an airdrop? Everybody kind of has this thing within crypto, which is, what am I supposed to do next? And something that would sort of be a dashboard on this would be good. And I know some of these things I'm talking about they're somewhat Web3, they're somewhat Web2, they're somewhat tooling. But not everything is necessarily a technology thing. A lot of things are product things, and they think, this community is focused on usability. So anyway, so those are about 15 things that you could work on. You don't have to start a startup with them right away. As I said, you can just write a technical review, set up a microsite or a GitHub. And, if you do something cool, if you build any of these things, I'm at twitter.com/BalajiS. Thank you very much.